This presentation is on fables in ancient Rome and Greece. Fables are a literary genre written in prose or verse. They are generally short stories based off personification and allegorical myths of animals who are in conflict. Sometimes, inanimate objects, legendary creatures, plants, or forces of nature may also be used. When such things are given human qualities, such as the ability to speak human language, it is called being anthropomorphized. Fables try to teach morals to a younger audience, and by making the stories shorter, it appeals more to the younger audience. In addition, the Latin word for fable is fabula, and as you see on the right, Aesop's fables are classics, and it is a go-to for children. We will explain this a little bit later in the video. How were fables passed down? In the beginning, when written text had not been invented, fables were passed down orally through generations. Because the fables were passed down orally and had no rigid structure because they weren't written in text, they may have been lost in translation, or a change in meaning may have occurred. After being shared for many years orally, it may have been written down, even if the context of the story was a little different from what it originally was when it was first passed down. The next step to fable history was writing them down. Although most fables were passed down orally, many modern fables were shared through written text. A good example of written down fables are Phaedrus's fables, which we will go into a little bit later in the video. Aesop is an ancient Greek fabulist and storyteller credited with writing Aesop's fables. However, the problem is, historians don't actually know if he was a real human being. They knew scattered details about his supposed life through ancient sources like Aristotle, Herodotus, and Plutarch. He was thought to have lived from 620 to 564 BC. The Aesop romance was probably a highly fictional book about Aesop's life. It may give some insight into his life, but it is probably not all truth. In the upper right-hand corner, you can see a depiction of how Aesop was seen by the ancient Roman and Greeks, and the lower right-hand corner shows a scene from the Aesop romance called Aesop and the Gardener. Did you know the story about the lion and the mouse, where the mouse frees the lion, called Leo et Mouse, was actually an Aesopic fable? These are some of Aesop's fables. In English, The Boy and the Wolf, Donkey and His Shadow, Dog and His Reflection, Goose Who Laid Golden Eggs, and Monkey and the Camel. Now, in Latin, we have De Rustico et Silva, De Cicada et Formica, De Equo et Asino, De Vulpe et Lupo, De Pavone et Grue. Did you know that Aesop's fables were first printed in English by William Caxton in 1484? I will now read to you a very famous Aesop poem called De Vulpe et Uva. I am not a poet, and I do not know how to read in prose, so it will not be read in the correct meter. Racemum dependentem frustra conata est vulpecula iteratis saltibus attingere, sed tantem conatibus casis omnino de fatigata indignabunda recessit inquiens apage acerbas et immaturas istas uvas, quae sane tam sordide sunt ut ne quidem humi aecentes atolerem, si mihi gratis offerentur. A very loose translation of this poem is, a fox tried in vain to reach a hanging cluster, jumping up again and again. But when at last she was completely tired out, all her efforts having failed, she angrily went away and said, "To heck with those bitter grapes, which not ready to eat. I swear they are so nasty that even if they were lying on the ground, I wouldn't pick them up if they were offered to me for free." A phrase that is used in English commonly these days also is sour grapes. and it comes from this story. The grapes aren't actually sour, but the fox says they are because he could not get them. So the moral of this story is it is easy to despise what you cannot get. In this fable, the frustrated fox is shown accurately conveying the human nature of how we despise what we cannot get. Fun fact, dramatis persona in the left-hand corner means a play/drama's character. Who was Phaedrus? He was a Latin author and versifier of Aesop's Fables. He believed his poems combined charm with a serious didactic purpose. He was born in 15 BC and died in 50 AD. Based off of certain texts he was mentioned in, it was believed that he was a Thracian slave. In addition to his unknown past, he was mentioned by Martial, a Roman poet, and Avianus, another Roman fabulist. After his death, his works became highly influential during the medieval times in Europe. Some famous fables by Phaedrus were Lupus et Agnes, the wolf and the lamb, Asinus et Senem, the donkey to the old man, Canem et Thesaurus, the dog and the treasure, Anis et Puella, the old woman and the young girl, and Musca et Mula, the fly and the mule. Why have fables impacted modern society? Well, for one, morals in the fables are the basis for many cultures and beliefs. Number 2, Aesop was put in the Greek Hall of Fame in 2014 because his fables lived on for so many centuries and has changed literature in some ways. Their satire and symbolism is shown throughout many works today. For example, Phaedrus exercised considerable influence throughout the Middle Ages. The largest, oldest known, and most influential of the prose versions is Romulus. It contains 83 fables and is as old as the 10th century and seems to have been based on a still earlier prose version which was under the name of Aesop. Romulus was one of the most highly influential texts in medieval Europe. Why are fables so important? Fables are huge insights into Greek and Roman culture. It makes it easier for historians to understand what the Romans and Greeks valued back then. Fables made it easier for children who were lower in the hierarchy of social classes like plebeians to learn, and even for those who couldn't read. Most of all, they share valuable lessons that represent human nature and their tendencies toward hate, greed, anger, and jealousy. Did you know fabula is a derivative of the word fari, which means to speak? Now we will start the quiz. What was it called when an animal was given human qualities like speaking? Write down your answer and pause the video. It is called anthropomorphism. What was another title for Aesop's romance? Write down your answer. The answer was the Vita, or the Life of Aesop, or the Book of Xanthus the philosopher and Aesop his slave. Number 3. What word was fabula derived from and what did it mean? Pause the video and write down your answer. Fabula was derived from fari, which meant to speak. What does dramatis persona mean? Pause the video and write down your answer. It means a play/drama's character. Last question, who was the Roman poet and Roman fabulist that mentioned Phaedrus? The answer is Martial and Avianus. Did you know that Aesop is a hygiene brand that sells products like hand soap and body wash, plus there is Latin written on them? This particular item is called the Reverence Aromatique hand cream. Here are some important websites if you ever in your spare time want to learn about ancient Roman and Greek fables.